Hey, so I'm going to be addressing Dr. Mike Israel's Primal is Bullshit video, and I'm going to splice in most of that so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. But before I do that, I want to put my cards on the table. So ever since Liverking hit the scene, what I've been saying about him is not that he's wrong about everything, but that he's going to make a lot of good ideas look bad with his antics. You know, it's much easier for the mainstream to attack an obviously roided up caveman who claims to be so afraid of chemicals that he's blowing up mattresses with tanks, but is yet obviously got a bunch of trin, than it is to actually address a lot of the substantive critiques that primals, paleos, what have you, bring up about mainstream nutrition and other lifestyle factors, right? And so regardless of whether you like Liverking, dislike him, like Dr. Mike, dislike him, agree with me on nutrition or don't, I want to make a broader point, and I hope that you'll end up seeing my point regardless of what you think about those. And that point is basically that if you think you found something good in the fitness sphere, it's best to just play it straight. Don't exaggerate, don't lie, don't say it did things that it didn't, just play it straight, and that's going to be best overall. You know, regardless of what you think about any of these people, I hope that you'll agree with me that what I say Dr. Mike is doing in this video is actually what's happening. And by the way, that it's exactly what I said was going to happen with Liverking. You have someone who is on the mainstream team using Liverking as a way to attack primal, paleo, etc., just by attacking this obvious clown rather than actually by addressing any of the issues, any of the intellectual issues, any of the actual substantive points of disagreement that paleo, primal, etc. brings up. And I think that's exactly what's going on, and I think once you've watched this whole video, you're going to have a hard time disagreeing with that. So I hope that regardless of what you think about nutrition, you end up seeing my broader point here. Without further ado, let's get to the intro.
Hey folks, Dr. Mike here for Renaissance Periodization, and today's BS topic is primal. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So a note to myself in this video is for me to start the video with, "What's up, primals?" JK, that's fucking stupid. Why is it stupid, you may ask?
So that was the intro, and it's a pretty good preview for a video that's going to be all snark and no substance.
Here's the thing. I don't know what the fuck primal means. There's a primal lifestyle, primal philosophy, and I think it means like ancestral, like what our ancestors used to do back in the idyllic times when we were all healthy and our chakras were aligned. Except that's all a crock of shit. Here's why. Our ancestors' eating and activity patterns were incredibly varied. You would think that's true because some of us trace our ancestry to North America, like Native Americans. Other trace our ancestry to the Korean Peninsula. Others to the southernmost tip of Africa, others to the northernmost part of Norway. You guys think people evolving in those environments ate the same food? What the fuck? I don't even know if northern Norway has any food to eat. I don't know, freaking people eating ice or some shit like that, right? Eating and activity patterns of our ancestors were incredibly varied. A lot of it was opportunism. Humans would eat whatever the fuck was around. That means they would scavenge. They would pick berries. They would eat mushrooms. They would try to eat ancestral grains, which largely sucked and are difficult to digest. That's why modern grains were genetically engineered to be better. They would eat everything they could get their fucking hands on. Kind of like the seagull diet or the squirrel diet. Anything that's around, that's going in. Because mostly humans were starving to death for large fractions of our evolutionary history. It was not a fun time. And it was not people in balance with their environment eating raw red meat and taking contrast baths or whatever the fuck primal stupid shit like that we're supposed to be doing. In the end.
So this is simultaneously true and very misleading, and this just hammers home my point about honesty and playing it straight. One of my pet peeves that really sets us up for things like this in the paleosphere is when carnivore paleotypes will want to pick one tribe as the representative tribe of the ancestral diet. Usually it's like the Inuit, the Hadza get thrown in there. This tribe ate only animal products, no plants, and most of it was raw. So, everyone was eating like the Inuit, or everyone was eating, animals plus some fruit like the Hadza or whatever. No, there were a ton of different tribes that had a bunch of different diets. You had some that were eating lots of starchy tubers, getting a lot of carbohydrates in their diet. Some that were eating a ton of their calories from saturated fat from coconuts. Some that were eating almost entirely animals, some that were eating a more mixed diet, all sorts of things, right? But here's the thing, they were operating within certain parameters, okay? There was no tribe that was subsisting mostly off canola oil. There was no tribe that was subsisting mostly off Impossible Burgers. There was no margarine tribe. There's a ton of stuff that we're eating now that there definitely wasn't a heart healthy, and eight servings of heart healthy whole grains tribe, right? So yeah, there was a lot of variation, but it was within certain parameters that are nothing like the diet that a lot of us eat now. So that's definitely not a legitimate criticism of paleo or primal or what have you. We can, we can clearly define I mean, I guess maybe there's some fuzziness, but there are definite boundaries between what an ancestral, hunter-gatherer type diet would be versus what a modern diet would be. I mean, if these people happen to find the stick of margarine in the jungle, would they eat it? I don't know, but they didn't. That's not a thing. So, it's clearly not something that we evolved with, and clearly not a part of our ancestral diet, and we can very easily make those boundaries. But it doesn't help when these influencers just say theirs is the one true ancestral diet, because that opens us up to criticisms like this. That makes people like Dr. Mike seem reasonable when they say stuff like this. And I mean, they're not. It's very disingenuous, but it's something that we're more open to when people are a little bit dishonest or exaggerate or make it seem like they have the one true paleo, primal, what have you diet, when in fact they do not. Let's continue with the next clip.
In the end, there's one big ass fact about real life. It's that modernity is a good thing. That's why every single primal coach you'll ever interact with that tells you we need to live like our ancestors do a couple things in common. They all go to the hospital when they get sick. Like I've said this about 1 trillion times, but if you break your leg, we don't push you next to the avatar tree and be like, all right, nature, do its thing. Because you just lay there like, ah. Like, why isn't the tree healing him? Because that's fucking how it works. You get hurt, you go to the hospital. You get sick, you go to the hospital. What does the hospital have? Big pharma medicines, evil corporate doctors, and machines upon machines upon machines that actually heal you. That's all modern. That's not primal. That's a good thing. You want to go to the hospital if you get fucked up.
This part is a straight up straw man. Nobody's saying you shouldn't go to the doctor when you have a broken leg. We might, however, since you brought up medicine, say that you should be wary that they don't prescribe you a bunch of addictive opioids that are killing millions in this country, because Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family were basically bribing doctors for many years to overprescribe opioids that they knew were going to be addictive, leading to the rise in this problem. And of course, they haven't been prosecuted under this system. So we might warn you about that, or you might be in the doctor's office for your leg to be amputated because the powers that be, the medical establishment, believe that it's safer and more responsible to just go ahead and cut it off due to diabetes than to let you go on a diet of primarily steak and, God forbid, eggs, to lose some of the weight and hopefully put your diabetes into remission, as we know is possible. So we might say that about the medical establishment. We're not saying we don't want one. We're saying we want modern technology to actually work for us and be used with some understanding of actual human health, not to do away with it altogether, right?
All of these primal coaches use social media. Social media is a technological device, okay? Because every time you use your iPhone to scroll social media, all that shit you see lives in a server farm in Iowa that takes like 1 trillion kilojoules of air conditioning and heating to maintain the exact temperature that they need to maintain it all the time. Probably more air conditioning and less heating because the servers make their own heat. I knew someone was going to put that in the fucking comments. That is not primal. There is no Facebook or Instagram or auto zoom cameras so you can talk into the camera and sell your primal programs in the fucking primal times. It does not exist. And they all shop at the fucking supermarket, which again is not primal. And I know it sounds crazy, but some of them even take steroids. I wonder who I'm talking about. It wouldn't be Liverking. It would be Liverking. Anyway, probabilistically, that's where my money's at. Unless you're just a shade of red for no reason. Maybe. Here's the thing.
So this part really gets to the core of the issue. If it weren't for Liverking and Dr. Mike tried to pull this, oh, you guys use social media things, if we were just dealing with adults in the room, responsible paleotypes, like I'll just give, for example, Mark Sisson, because he also uses the term primal, but you could never get away with this nonsense, with someone like him. It would be as simple as saying, no, dude, nobody's saying you can't use modern technology. That's a straw man. That has nothing to do with what we're saying. We're saying eat a better diet and this, that, and the other, right? We're not saying you can't use any technology. That's nonsense, right? And it would be that simple to dismiss it, and you couldn't get any traction attacking paleo by saying something that's silly, right? But here's the catch. When you have an obviously trend up maroon caveman running around pretending he's so afraid of technology he won't sleep on a freaking bed, despite the fact that he's injecting loads of steroids and riding around the world on a private jet, now it looks kind of ridiculous. Now there is this hypocrisy. Now there is this contrast where you see someone trying to pretend like they're trying to avoid certain aspects of technology while embracing others, and that looks weird, and that's something that you can easily latch onto and start scoring points on. And again, this is something that would not be a way to score points if it weren't for this one individual doing silly things. They're not, well, maybe there are some other people doing silly things as well, but he's obviously the primary candidate, and that's why, Dr. Mike is using him. And if you watch this whole video, and I've linked most of it so far, you can see that this has mostly been about primal or paleo, this whole thing in general. This is not like a call out of Liverking specifically. Liverking is not the focus of the video. He's the ammunition, okay? And this is kind of the core of the video, this part right here where he's just bagging on Liverking a bit to kind of make his point about modern technology. That's his main argument. There's not going to be much more to it. I'm not leaving anything out where he's citing studies or anything. This is it. So it kind of makes my point that this sort of a thing would just not be possible without clowns like this.
The primal people have some fucking good points, but the good points can be summarized with excising the primal bullshit altogether and just saying the following. Do healthy shit. Which means what? Be more active. Train harder and train more consistently. Eat plenty of any and all of the following food groups. Lean proteins. Veggies, fruits, grains, healthy fats. Be truer to yourself and to what you want, and don't engage in toxic habits that are ruining your life. Don't watch as much TV as you maybe are now, or maybe watch more if that's what makes you happy. Do healthy shit that makes sense. Have a good sleep schedule. All that stuff is great. It doesn't require us to be primal. It just requires us to do obvious shit that we already know we're fucking supposed to be doing. Like, you don't watch Netflix till 4 a.m. and you're like, yeah, man.
Here's the really interesting part to me. This was pretty much it. This was kind of the end of the meat and potatoes of the video. There's a really, 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 really drawn out joke after this, but this is pretty much it. You had the attack on Liverking, and then you have kind of this portion, which is a little bit odd. It's kind of vague. It kind of makes it seem like he's saying he agrees with the primals, but what he's actually saying isn't really what they would say at all. And there's just not the usual level of detail that you would expect from this guy. I mean, he typically does much longer videos with a ton of detail and technical stuff. My understanding is that he self-identifies as a nerd and likes to get into all these details, so it's just kind of odd that he let it go with such a kind of vague conclusion. You almost wonder why he made the video, because this is extremely short. It's 6 minutes long, and that was the meat of it. I'll give you my theory on why I think he's doing this, but first I'll just go into the substance of what he says. He says, primal can be summarized by do healthy shit. Well, here's the thing. The primals would, I think, disagree with Dr. Mike on what healthy shit entails, but he's not really laying out his take on what healthy shit entails enough to tell from this video. Specifically, primals would, I think, disagree with him on what is healthy to eat specifically. And he does give some nutritional recommendations, and he almost makes it sound like they're primal, but I don't think the primals would agree with that. I don't think that Dr. Mike agrees with primal people on what is healthy to eat, but he's not making that clear, and I have a suspicion on why, but let's just go through it first, and then I'll tell you. Okay, so he says, eat lean proteins. Well, primals don't like the term proteins because that can be used to describe a lot of things that primals don't consider to be healthy, such as Impossible Burgers. Primals prefer the term meat because that describes what they're trying to eat, and they don't think it necessarily has to be lean because they generally don't think that animal fat is harmful. I know in the list he says eat lots of grains, that's not something that primals generally agree with. Primals generally say that's something to be avoided, at least to a certain extent, depending on school of thought, right? I don't know why he threw that in there as if it's something that primals agree with when it's definitely not. And then finally, eat lots of healthy fats. Could you be any more vague? Do you want to maybe tie yourself down, take a position on what healthy fats entail? Because some people say canola oil is a healthy fat. Some people say grass-fed butter is a healthy fat. Generally, those people disagree. Where do you stand? And of course, he doesn't say. He just says healthy fats. Like, what does that mean? And obviously, he has a position on this, but I don't think he wants to say. And here's why. I think this is not the only time I've seen a science-based bodybuilder in a little bit of an awkward situation on nutrition, because I think they're between two worlds. The scientists, of course, have more of a mainstream opinion on nutrition, which is very anti-meat, especially anti-red meat, anti-saturated fat, all that sort of thing. But bodybuilders, of course, tend to be a little bit more alternative. They know that steak and eggs work well for their dieting. They tend to eat lots of whole eggs. Milk in many cases, tend to be fans of steak. What I'm kind of thinking here is that Dr. Mike doesn't want to come out and say that you're not supposed to eat ribeye steak, because he knows that would make a lot of his subscribers unhappy. But as a science-based guy, he kind of has to, because the mainstream is recommending against red meat, and especially saturated fat. He probably doesn't want to talk too much about the eggs thing, because eggs only recently are allowed again after they finally had to admit the cholesterol doesn't actually cause any problems after 50 years of saying that it does. And people will say that, oh well, that's just an example of science working the way it's supposed to. They updated their positions in the light of new data. But okay, you don't just say, okay, we updated our positions. I mean, let's have an inquiry into, okay, why were we so wrong about something so important for so long? How did that happen? And when you go back and look at that, there's a lot of other things into question, like, for example, saturated fat, etc. Anyway, I'm not trying to be too long-winded about, what you should and shouldn't eat, but I think that that's why Dr. Mike wanted to make a fairly vague video kind of attacking primal, paleo, etc., because I think as a science-based guy, he is opposed to that sort of diet, that sort of thinking. Mainstream is very solidly opposed to that sort of thinking, despite the fact that every study I'm familiar with that actually looked at like the effects of a paleo, carnivore, keto diet, seem to show good health effects. But the mainstream is very, very against that sort of thing. So I think Dr. Mike does want to attack it, but actually attacking the details of his disagreement would be somewhat costly given the preferences of the bodybuilding audience. So I think a very convenient thing to do, which Liverking gave him the option to do, was just to attack a clownish person that can be seen as a representative of those beliefs and just mock this guy for being maroon and acting like an idiot, and just scoring some points against primal that way without actually having to put his cards on the table in terms of what foods he thinks you should and shouldn't eat. So that's my theory. See if you agree or if you disagree, and let me know if you were persuaded that this is an example of exactly what I said was going to happen. People using Liverking to attack something that's hard to attack on its own. I mean, obviously not everyone has the same constraints as a bodybuilding YouTuber, but there are a number of reasons I think it's difficult for the mainstream to attack these sort of ideas, and I think Liverking gives them a very convenient opportunity to do that. So let me know if you were finally persuaded that I'm not just a hater who's angry that he has large abdominal muscles, or whatever it is I'm supposed to be, wanting small deadlifts. Anyway, I'm just gonna let this roll out with his extremely extended joke about Lamborghinis, just to kind of show how much he was trying to just get off the topic. Okay, we do what we had to do. We attacked the paleo thing. Hopefully people start thinking it's dumb. Let me get out of here. Let me just talk about Lamborghinis and butlers for like a minute and a half. Yeah, leave a comment down below. Let me know if you agree, disagree, dislike me, dislike Liverking, dislike Dr. Mike, or I don't know, whatever. I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting things here, but let me know what you thought. I'll let him roll it out.
Comment, like, subscribe, get in that algorithm, because one of the best things about Modernity, it is designed the Lamborghini. And my butlers are honestly getting tired of not having any more new Lamborghinis. They're asking for a new Lamborghini just about every day now. Annoying, but I can't push back hard against them for two reasons. One is there's kind of a lot of butlers now. I mean, I'm like a trillionaire or something. There's like 20, I don't even know all the butlers by name, some of them by face. So when they say, hey, Dr. Mike, get us more Lamborghinis so we can drive them and take care of them for you, I'm like, oh, all right, fellas, Frank. And they're like, it's Bob. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'll go talk to HR. The second thing is it's not technically a union, but the butlers have their own cooperative and they're sort of making demands. And I honestly don't really feel safe all the time, but their only demands are for more Lamborghinis. Please buy shit from RP so that I can stay safe to make more videos. Did you guys hear that? I think the butlers are coming. See you guys next time.